Hi, I'm Lisa Hartman, Vice President of Communications with NIRI San Francisco. With me here today is Ted Allen, Vice President of Strategic Communications with NIRI National. Ted, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Good. We're here to talk about regulatory reform, and some of the hot topics right now are really around disclosures rules. And I know that NIRI National, as well as you personally, have been advocating on behalf of public companies for quite some time, both directly with the SEC, as well as representatives from both the House and the Senate. I had the opportunity to go with you out to Washington, D.C., and there were two primary bills that we're focused on and that you're advocating in favor of. One is the Brokaw Act, the other is on a proxy advisory bill. Let's start with the Brokaw Act. Can you give us a little overview of the background of that bill?
Sure. The Brokaw bill is a very interesting bill. It was introduced by Senator Tammy Baldwin. It was inspired by the bankruptcy of a small town in Wisconsin that collapsed after its main employer was taken over by hedge funds, who took advantage of the fact that the 13D rules had not been updated in more than 40 years. And so what her bill does is it modernizes the 13D disclosure regime by cutting the disclosure period from 10 days to 4 days. It also includes short positions, derivatives, cash settled swaps, and also targets Wolfpack as well. And so we think this bill will go a long way in terms of providing more transparency about hedge fund activism. And we're encouraged to see that the bill has some Republican support. Senator David Perdue from Georgia has agreed to sign on as a co-sponsor. So we're very optimistic about his chances in 2018.
Excellent. So you kind of talked about what the benefit is for public companies and IROs, but can you talk just a little bit more why IROs should care, why public companies should care about this?
Well, we think this bill will be very beneficial to public companies because it'll address the problem of ambush activism that a lot of public companies have to deal with because of the ability of hedge funds to sort of team up together to use the existing rules to amass large positions far beyond 5% in secret and to be able to buy up shares on the cheap to the detriment of other investors. So we think having the disclosure period cut to 4 days will give companies more breathing room. They'll be less likely to be forced into making a quick short-term concession, such as large share buyback or something that may not be in the interests of long-term investors. So from an IR team standpoint, certainly more time to engage with other investors to find out what they think. We think will be beneficial to both investors and public companies.
And at this point, what can we as IROs do to help promote this reform and this change coming through Congress?
We're encouraging public companies to write letters to members of the Senate and the House to express support for the Brokaw Act bill. We think hearing from public companies directly will help build bipartisan support for the legislation. Already a number of companies such as Denny's and Home Depot have written letters in support, so we hope to see some more companies as well.
Excellent. So let's move on to the proxy advisory bill. Again, can you give us a little background on what this reform is? I understand that it's just been reintroduced at the Senate, and so maybe you could talk to us again about what the background is on this bill and what this does for us as publicly traded companies.
Yes, as many of you know, proxy advisors are not really regulated by the SEC. This bill would require both major proxy advisors to register with the SEC to provide better disclosure of conflicts of interest. It also would mandate a draft review process, so all companies would get a chance to see draft reports before they're sent out to investors. And we want to thank Representative Sean Duffy from Wisconsin, who's been the leader on this issue. He just reintroduced his bill, and he hopes to have a markup later this month. And he's been encouraging companies to send in their horror stories that they've had with proxy advisors to help sort of bolster the case for this bill. This bill already has broad Republican support. Representative Duffy is hoping to get support from Democrats as well, because this is an issue that impacts all public companies, and it's not really a partisan issue, is an issue of just sort of providing some sort of better oversight and fairer treatment of issuers to ensure that investors get the most accurate information possible.
So you mentioned that the SEC is hearing from public companies and specifically around some of the negative engagement that companies have had or horror stories. So again, my question is, what are you proposing that we as IROs and public companies do to help promote the change here in this reform?
We're asking, and NASDAQ has been asking this as well, anyone to send me examples of problems they've had. We've heard from companies that their CEO gets misclassified, is overreported every year. We've heard that from members. We've heard problems that the analysts, that the proxy advisors don't understand the company's compensation practices. So any sort of examples like that, would be great to pass along. And I know that many of you all work at companies where you have very cautious general counsel. We can certainly provide, anonymize your comments and just sort of package them together and get them to Congressman Duffy, because anything we can do to provide real life examples will go a long way in terms of getting bipartisan support for this bill.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed speaking with you today. And on behalf of NIRI San Francisco, I want to thank you for participating in this webcast. And for more information about what NIRI and NIRI National is doing to advocate for public companies, please go to our website at www.nirisf.org.